in the contract, if you look at Article 12, Section 4C1, it does specifically state that the review must be based on a reasonable and representative sample of the work. And what that leads to is a problem that we see sometimes, which is targeted work. Now, Tanja, if I was going to ask you, what is targeted work in your mind?
Well, as a revenue officer, there are certain things that show red flags for managers, such as overage cases.
Oh, that's a good one.
Large dollar cases. Cases that may have CSAID issues or statute issues. But any of those things that give those red flags to managers, that may make them look into this case. And so that would be more of a targeted evaluation or targeted work if the only thing that they're pulling are just those cases.
Right. I would agree with that. And let's say for customer service representatives, if you're a CSR and you have some short calls and you have some really long calls,
yes.
If you notice that management is only pulling the really long calls and reviewing those, that is targeted work. So they would have to pull also calls that are not as long,
yes,
right?
That's correct.
Or even, let's say if there's something that you as an individual have problems with. For example, let's say manual refunds.
Okay.
I can't add 2 and 2. That's why I went to law school, right?
Okay.
So if I had to do manual refunds, that would be a problem for me, right?
Okay, it would.
So if my manager knows, there's a case with targeted refunds, I'm going to review that on Janice, then the manager would also have to review cases that don't involve that. So if you see that they're targeting things, targeting can be a lot of different things is the point of this conversation.
Yes.
So if you feel that management is intentionally picking work that is going to negatively impact your performance appraisal, when you come and talk to your union steward about it, you will want to raise that.
Your evaluation should consist of a reasonable sample of your work, and that's the reason why.
Exactly. And again, this is per the contract, management has to justify the sample of work that they use. Okay, so if we find and we're making arguments that it's not reasonable, fine. The agency has to explain why it is reasonable, and that's their burden. And as the union, if we're filing a grievance, we have the right to ask the question, but you as an employee also have the right to raise that with your manager if you feel that work is being targeted and not being properly offset.
And Janice, I actually had this to happen to me one time, and I realized, and I did not know, I was a new revenue officer, maybe year 2 or so, and I realized that the manager was pulling only potential overage cases. And so my evaluation consisted of majority potential overage cases. Now, there were a few other ones here and there, but the reviews were only done on potential overage when I had closed and done some other work, but this were the cases that were only looked at. That definitely was was targeting my work.
It certainly was. And so, again, when you come to the union, we have stewards who are revenue officers, revenue agents, CSRs, and so they may not know all of the issues. So it's important for you as a member to understand this so that when you come to us, you can explain if you feel that there's an issue with the sample of work not being reasonable and representative.
So Janice, now that we've talked about a reasonable sample of the work, let's talk about the right to rebut something that you may not feel that's just right.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, so there's different rights to rebut in the contract. First, let's just talk about the right to rebut the appraisal overall.
Okay.
As an employee, if you disagree with your performance appraisal when you get it at the end of the year, you have the right to submit a written rebuttal to that appraisal. And management is not supposed to come back and counter what you rebut.
Okay.
Basically, what they're supposed to do is merely attach it to the performance appraisal. Well, why do I think that this right to rebut is important?
Okay.
The union files a grievance. if they have your version, your explanation, why you disagree with the assessment that management has performed, if the case comes to my desk, I'm going to be a lot more persuaded by an employee who has taken the time to do that work than by someone who hasn't done self-assessment, who hasn't done any rebuttal of the performance appraisal.
And I think that that's good to know, that you do have a right to rebut the evaluation itself. The appraisal, I'm sorry, to rebut that appraisal itself.
Sure. Yeah, and it has to be done within 15 work days of the time that you receive the assessment. And you are entitled to up to 4 hours of admin time on the clock to prepare that. So why wouldn't you prepare that?
Yes. It's definitely important to see their reason why that they don't agree, and have it in black and white.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just that whole process of going through and doing the analysis, you may find that maybe you actually agree with management, or you may identify some reasons why what they came up with when they assigned that assessment is really wrong. So either way, it's a benefit to do it.
Correct.